Hola, ¿cómo está? Happy Sunday. If you're new here, welcome. And if you are not new here, welcome back. And as always, if you cannot hear me, please let me know. If you cannot hear me through my mic, if my mic is not on, please let me know in the chat. And if you can hear me, feel free to say hi. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and get right into the message. I'm gonna get just straight to the point because I can be a little awkward at the beginning of these lives, so I just want to get right into the message. So, today we're going to be talking about the thin line between mental illness and evilness. Now, before I say anything else, let me make it clear I'm not saying that people who are mentally ill are evil, but some mentally ill people are. Some of them are, but it's not because they're mentally ill. So, the question is, what separates somebody who's just mentally ill and needs help versus somebody who is mentally ill but also evil? At what point do we recognize that somebody's mental illness isn't a justification for their evilness? For example, think about people like Jeffrey Dahmer. He had a lot of mental illnesses. He had a lot of mental disorders. But guess what? He was also evil. So another question becomes, can people like that truly be helped and rehabilitated? In my humble opinion, no. In my humble opinion, no. And I'll get into why shortly. But let's first break down the definition of evil. Evil means profound immorality, wickedness, or actions causing significant harm, suffering, or destruction to another person. So, now let's break down the definition of mental illness. Let me pick up my notes. Let me pick my notes back up. What is the definition of mental illness? It's a wide range of mental, behavioral, or emotional disorders that interfere with a person's ability to function, work, and engage in everyday life. So, again, like I said at the beginning, I am not saying that everybody that's mentally ill is evil, because if that was the case, I would be calling myself evil because technically I have a mental illness. I have a mental disorder, anxiety. And again, mental illness is a wide range. You have the more mild mental illnesses. And let me be clear, I don't think any mental illness is really mild. Like, even though I just have anxiety, it's in my opinion, like in my experience, it has not been mild. Like, I have gone through it because of my anxiety. It's a constant battle, it's an everyday battle. Even me coming on here and doing these lives, I'd be terrified. But at the same time, I just have such a strong urge to speak and share. So even though I be anxious as fuck, I just force myself to do it. I just push through. So in my opinion, even though anxiety technically is on the more mild range of mental illnesses, in my experience, it's definitely a struggle. It's definitely a battle. But in terms of all the mental illnesses, I would say things like anxiety and depression, those are lower on the list of mental illnesses. But the more severe mental illnesses like schizophrenia, narcissistic personality disorder, bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, all these different things, those are more on the extreme end. Now, here's the thing. Like I said at the beginning, I do believe that every evil person, in my humble opinion, and I feel like this is probably something that could even be scientifically proven, every person that is evil has some type of mental illness that has some type of influence on their actions. However, it's still not an excuse. So what separates, because like I said before, you can, well, I don't know if I said this before, but I'm gonna say it now. You could have two people that have the same mental illness, or maybe they just have similar childhood trauma. One person might turn out to be good and not harm anybody, and the other person might turn out to be a serial killer like Jeffrey Dahmer. So the question is, what separates the two? What separates those two individuals is empathy. People who are evil, the biggest thing, the biggest common thing that you'll find amongst people that are evil are they lack empathy. They have no regard for human life. And that's what separates those two people. And the reason why I'm even talking about this is because I've come across so many recent cases, like court cases, where somebody might have murdered somebody or raped a child and did all these crazy things. And a lot of times what will come up is mental illness. So then it becomes, okay, can people like that truly be helped and rehabilitated? Or will those people never change? Are they just evil and that's just their destiny? And I was asking myself, like, damn, how do you know the difference? Like, how do you separate the two? And when I was reflecting on it, I realized that it was empathy. That's what separates those two people. And also, and some people might not agree with me because some people don't believe in this. I definitely think demonic possession plays a role. As much as people believe in God, whenever you start talking about the devil, they're like, oh, the devil's not real, hell isn't real, blah, blah. I'm gonna be real. I don't know if hell is real, and I ain't worried about that because I ain't going there because I love the Lord. I serve the Lord. Like, so I don't even be worried about, like, oh, am I gonna go to hell? Like, I don't even think like that. But I do believe that there is a dark force that influences some of these humans that are on this earth. I definitely believe that there is a dark force. If you want to call it the devil, if you want to call it negative energy, if you want to call it just, if you want to just say the dark force, like whatever you want to call it, that dark entity, that energy, that darkness definitely exists. Just as much as God exists, the darkness exists too. And I believe people who are evil, people who, yes, they may have mental illnesses, but they're also evil. The reason why it's not just them having a mental illness and, struggling internally, but they're going out and harming other people, I do believe that the enemy plays a role in that. People love to say, oh, we're all God's children, we're all God's children. And I could be wrong. I'm not going to sit here and act like I know everything. I'm not going to sit here and act like I have all the answers. But in my humble opinion, I don't believe that every human is God's child. I'm sorry. I don't. You mean to tell me Jeffrey Dahmer was a child of God? Absolutely not. In my humble opinion, I believe he was a spawn of Satan. Just like God has children, I believe Satan has children as well. God allows them to be born, but they end up being demons. They end up being demons. They end up causing a lot of misery and just harm to people while they're here on earth. No, I'm sorry. I don't believe they are children of God. Respectfully, I could be wrong, but that's just my humble opinion. So, like I said, I do believe that people who have mental illnesses and are evil, they're out here committing heinous acts and harming people and being violent towards people, killing people, raping people, different things like that. I do believe that there is a dark force controlling them because you'll even hear in some of these cases where the person will say, like, this voice told me to go in there and shoot her, this voice told me to do this. And it's like, what do you think that voice is? People can just say, oh, well, it's their mental illness. Yeah, but in my opinion, there's also a spiritual side to that. That person is being controlled by that dark force. Now, again, that doesn't excuse them. That doesn't mean like, oh, well, they were possessed by Satan, they were possessed, so they just weren't in their right mind, so we can let them be free into society. Hell no, I'm not saying that. But because again, that's another thing. Even though I do believe that there's a such thing as demonic possession, I do also understand that we have free will. We have free will as much as a person could be like, I was possessed, blah, 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 which may be a true thing. I believe God gives all of us free will. And even if somebody is evil, I still believe that that person has the free will to change. But the thing is, a lot of them don't. A lot of them don't. And that's why I say I don't believe that people who are truly evil, like people such as Jeffrey Dahmer or Hitler or Charles Manson or take your pick, whoever you want to name, I don't believe those people can truly be helped and be rehabilitated. And let me take a sip of water. But yeah, so here's the thing. I am a very empathetic person and I always want to see the good in people. And when I see a little good in somebody, it's hard. Not anymore. Let me make this clear. I don't feel this way anymore. I'm a lot more careful and wiser about who I allow around me. But in the past, I was a little more I was a little more gullible. Um I I would give people the benefit of the doubt too much. And my last my last relationship, um, I recognized very early on that he was mentally ill. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know if it was bipolar disorder. Because he would just have this switch. He would be like fun and laughs and giggles and lighthearted. And then the smallest thing would trigger to him where it was like a switch would happen in his mind. And it was scary when it would happen because his eyes would change. So I knew very early on, like, there's something wrong with this man. He's mentally ill. But even so, I stayed because in my mind, I'm like, he just needs help. Like, who's going to help him? Like, I have to be there for him. Maybe I can change him. Maybe I can help him. Like, I recognized the man was very disturbed. I recognized he was very mentally disturbed, very mentally ill. But, and at the time, I didn't think he was evil. There was definitely some darkness that I felt from him. Like, there was definitely something dark about him, but again, I just thought like maybe it's just his mental illness. Like obviously he has mental issues. So I really empathize with that. And that's why I stayed for so long. But it got to a point where I had to realize, yeah, Kyla, he is mentally ill, but guess what? This man is also evil. This man is also evil. And it once I started to realize that, it still took me a while to accept that because there were good things that I saw in him. There were definitely good things that I saw in him. But I'm gonna be honest, the bad outweighed the good. And once I finally realized, like, yeah, Kyla, this man does have mental issues, but he's also evil. And if you don't leave this man, he's going to end up hurting you. Once I finally accepted that, that's when I left. And there were so many signs. Like he told me that there was people that he wanted to kill. He didn't tell me that he killed anybody, but he would like go on these rants and he would be just saying these like people that he used to be friends with, like, yeah, I ain't gonna lie, sometimes I want to kill him. And I'll be like, so nigga, if you want to kill him, how do I know that you ain't gonna want to end up killing me? Like, because he was already like very abusive at that point. He was just verbally abusive and breaking things in the house and just, going on these crazy rants and intimidating me and just all these different things. But eventually, he did get physically abusive, and that's when I left. That's when I realized that day that he shook me and choked me, and it only lasted for a few seconds. Thank God my neighbor ran out and grabbed him because this happened outside. Those few seconds where he was choking me, the look in this man's eyes, I'm like, yo, he is possessed by something. And that's when I realized, like, Kyla, you got to stop having so much empathy for this man, and you need to have some empathy for yourself, or you going to end up 6 feet under. Because I just had that feeling. I had that feeling for a while that, like, this man might end up killing you. Like, this is the type of nigga that would definitely snap one day and kill you. But I just didn't want to believe it. But the day that he finally put his hands on me, that's when I was like, oh no, like, I gotta leave. Yeah, I have empathy. I feel bad that you're obviously very, sick. But at the same time, I don't feel bad enough to stay and be somebody's punching bag or end up, being somebody's victim or like any of that. So I was like, no, like, that's when I had to realize. And another thing that I realized, I wasn't really battling him. Like, it wasn't really me versus him. I was really battling the enemy. I realized that before we even broke up, like, especially once he put his hands on me, and then we were still living with each other 3 weeks after that, and he was doing all these different things, and I realized, Kyla, it's not even about him. Like, you're not even really fighting him or battling him. It's really the devil. Literally, it's the devil using this man, possessing this man to try to get to you, try to break you down. So I realized it was very spiritual. And I was like, look, no matter how much empathy I have for this man, I have more empathy for myself. And I'm not going to allow this man to end up taking my life or even put his hands on me again. So yeah, I had to realize, like, Kyla, no matter how much empathy you have for somebody, two things can be true. You can recognize that a person is mentally ill, but also recognize they are evil and you need to stay the fuck away from them. Two things can be true. You can have empathy because you know that they're mentally ill, but also recognize that this is a dangerous person to be around. And here's the thing. And it's funny because I was having this conversation with my man this morning, and he was like, do you really believe, like, some people are just born evil? Like, I think most people, like, turn evil, da da da. And I was like, I mean, in some cases, but I feel like there are some humans that are born to be evil. And I know that's so hard to accept because when we see babies are innocent. All babies are innocent while they're babies. And of course, when you look at them, you're just like, oh, you're so innocent. Da, da. But it's like, guess what? Jeffrey Dahmer was once a baby. Hitler was once a baby. Donald Trump was once a baby. Like, all these evil people, they were once babies too. So it's crazy to think about, like, yo, some of these babies are going to turn out to be serial killers. Like, it's not funny, but it's just crazy to think about. Like, I do believe that people talk about nurture versus nature. I do believe in some cases a person when a person is mentally ill and maybe they had a crazy childhood, that definitely contributes to them being mentally ill. And it might even contribute to them making certain mistakes. But I feel like there's levels to it. I feel like there's levels to it. People that are serial killers that are out here, like the BTK killer, out here raping and killing women like for years and years. I'm sorry. I don't feel like people like that can truly change or be rehabilitated. In most cases, 9 times out of 10, there's exceptions to every rule. But 9 times out of 10, people like that can't be saved. Like, that was just in their destiny to be evil. And it's sick to think about when you're an empathetic person and you believe in God. Like, it's sick to even imagine that people like that exist, but unfortunately they do. And that's why I say I don't believe that every human is a child of God. Some of these motherfuckers are spawns of Satan, like in my humble opinion. And I could be wrong. Only God knows everything, but I'm just, giving my honest opinion and what I think, what my philosophy is. But oh, I have two examples of. I do have two examples that I want to give y'all, and they're complete opposites of each other. And this might make you question, like, I don't know. I mean, in my opinion, even though I'm like saying I feel like certain people will never change and can't be helped or rehabilitated, also, I do feel like God has a final say. God has a final say, and I feel like anybody can change with God's help. I do feel like anybody can change, but let's be real. Most people, like Jeffrey Dahmer, most people that are evil, they don't change. And that's just in their nature. However, I want to share these two stories with you. This is going to be the last thing I share. And this is maybe going to make you think about it and ponder on it and be like, I don't know. So, okay, which story do I want to give first? Oh, let me give this story first. So, there was this teenager, and him and his friend broke into these older white people's house and they robbed them and killed them, right? They got caught. But because the guy was a minor, he didn't get tried as adult. So he did serve time, but he didn't serve as much time as he would have if he committed it as an adult. So he finally gets out. And the daughter of the couple that he killed, she meets up with this guy after he gets out of prison, meets up with him, and it's this whole like press conference. And she says to him that she forgives him and that everybody deserves a second chance. And he was a felon, so it was hard for him to get a good job. So, oh, excuse me, I keep burping. I'm sorry. It was hard for him to get a good job. And she was rich, so she hired him as a landscaper for her house because she had like a really big house and she had a bunch of employees or whatever that help her maintain the house. So she hired this man, mind you, she hired this man who killed her parents years prior. Hired him, not only what, met up with him and told him that she forgave him, hired him to work on her property, right? He ends up stealing a large amount of cash from her. And once she finds out, instead of her calling the police, she just fires him. She just tells him, like, you can't work for me anymore, blah, blah, blah. Guess what? This man comes back a couple days after she fired him. He comes back and he kills her. The same woman who forgave him for killing her parents years prior when he was just a teenager. She gives him a second chance, even helps him like get a good job, get back on his feet. And not only does he steal from her, he goes back and kills her. And that's why I say some people are just evil. That's in their nature. It doesn't some of it sometimes it starts in the childhood. They show signs of it in the childhood. Jeffrey Dahmer, when he was a little kid, he was killing animals and dissecting them, doing all these different things like as a child. And it's sad to think about, but that's the reality. But then I have another story, and this story is crazy. So it was this guy. I want to say he was in the mob, but he killed a bunch of people throughout his life, and he got sent to prison for life, right? Decades later, this dude is like old. He's like maybe in his 70s now, and he said he has remorse for every single person that he ever killed or even hurt. Not only did he say he has remorse for all the people that he killed, he also is now a follower of Christ, according to him. Of course, I don't know this man personally. Only God knows if he's being genuine, but not only does he says he has remorse and he regrets, all the people that he killed and hurt. Now he said he's a follower of Christ. He's a believer. And not only that, he said, me believing in God and following Christ, that's not because I'm trying to get out. I know I'm never going to get out of prison. And guess what? I shouldn't. He was like, I should never be let out of prison for what I did. I deserve to be here for the rest of my life. And I was like, wow, that blew my mind. I've never heard anything like that. The fact that not only did he have remorse for all the people he killed, he became a follower of Christ, and he wasn't even doing it to try to look good so he can be up for parole and get out early. No, he said, "Look, I have life. I'm not even eligible for parole, and I don't deserve to be out. I deserve to do life in prison because of what I've done. I have to suffer the consequences of my actions." And I'm like, wow. So that goes back to what I was saying. Like, I don't know, even though I do feel like in most cases, people like that never change. They're just evil, and that's always who they're going to be. There is that small percent where, like I said, God can make anything happen. Anybody can change with the help of God. And that blew my mind. Like that's why I'm like, even though I believe in most cases, people like that are just evil and they never change, and that's it. There are those small cases where they do wake up and find God and truly have remorse, but it's a slippery slope because that doesn't always happen. And sometimes people can fake like they've changed, and then they let them back out into society, and guess what? They end up doing the same shit. I've heard those stories so many times too. So yeah, it's just something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, and I want to hear your thoughts. Feel free, whatever your like opinion is on it or your theories about that, feel free to share that either in the chat or in the comments after the live is over. But yeah, I love you guys. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If this message spoke to you in any way, please make sure you like it and make sure you're subscribed. I love you guys. Oh, and thank you for the new sub. Okay, bye.